Good evening, friends. Okay, my health was okay. I was not taking class, not because of health, because I have some work piled up, and still it is actually piled up of the test series where I have to make lots of model answers, and making model answers actually take a little bit more time, because when you are making a model answer, everyone expects that they should be perfect. So it ultimately takes a little bit more time. So that is, I'm busy for last 2-3 days in that, and still I think more 2 days will be required. Okay, so here we are. So I think more or less we have completed our population geography with bearing few topics which I'll just name here. And one topic which we are still ongoing is migration and COVID. Migration and COVID-19. This is one topic that we have to still take up. What else is left? Can you just enlighten me on this? What are other things which are left? I think one topic which was not there was tribal problems and their solutions. Other topic which hasn't been completed is कौन सा टॉपिक है? Social, I think social well-being and quality of life. One more topic which is not there is, which we haven't completed, is social capital. ठीक है? What else? Have we in the videos which were there, was there this topic population problems? उसमें पॉपुलेशन प्रॉब्लम्स वाला टॉपिक था क्या? टेल मी फास्ट. Okay, so it was there. Population problem is done. Population problem. Someone is saying yes, someone is saying no. Yes, no, yes, no. No is greater, so I will take no. Population problems. So these 5 topics are essentially Okay, I have discussed briefly. So briefly is, I think, fine, because here and there I would have discussed more. In population policy also I have discussed, but I'll just give you an overview of how, if suppose you have to write about that, how you can essentially write. Okay, so we'll start with some of these topics. Now I'll just tell you what we are going to do first. For this topic, social being, well-being and quality of life, we will be taking this topic with economic geography, where we have to talk about the topic of economic development. There is a topic of development, measurement of development. Okay, so this will be taken up with economic geography. This topic, if you talk about tribal problems and their solutions. In regional development and planning, there is a topic by the name of backward areas. So here, there one topic which is mentioned is tribal area development. So I will be taking up this topic of tribal problems and their solutions in there, the tribal area development topic. Okay, that means I have to take up this social capital topic, migration and COVID-19 and population problems. Okay, these two topics we are going to do it on Monday. Today our topic would be, we'll talk about this population problems, and then after that I will take up queries. If you have any questions with respect to the videos which were uploaded, which you were unable to understand, some things which we have done in the class while reading you couldn't understand. Okay, so this is what we are going to do today. And from Tuesday, I am going to start with economic geography. I told you before that I am reshuffling the schedule little bit. So I am going to start with this topic of economic geography. Yes, I am not taking class on weekend. So this is one of the typical topics of the syllabus which is very difficult to complete because it is very vast. But we will see that how this vast topic can also be reduced, and we can have a very good level of preparation in this topic of economic geography as well. So we are going to start with economic geography from Tuesday. If you have any doubts with what I have talked here, you can ask me now before I continue. Okay, so I think there are no queries because you people are not asking me. So I am continuing simply. So one question which we had to do was explain the consequences of population aging. Consequences of population aging. Santosh, relation with of economic geography to GS, we'll talk about there. Yes, there is huge relation. Almost half of your paper 1 GS, it overlaps with your economic geography. No, there is no need to upload videos this weekend. This weekend I am giving you time to revise. So till now what we have done, you just revise that. That should be enough for this weekend. Okay. So let us move on. Explain the consequences of population aging. योगेश, क्वेरीज क्लास इसके बाद है अभी, सो वेट फॉर ऑल दोस थिंग्स. Explain the consequences of population aging. So like always, I'll give you 2 minutes. Think what you will be writing. Okay, so if we talk about population aging, number of things here we have to look into. So one is, we can start this answer with an introduction, and introduction with respect to the same phenomena. So we can say something like, with the progress of demographic transition in higher stages, comma, population aging becomes inevitable. Population aging becomes inevitable. This has several, can I say, economic, social, cultural, and geopolitical consequences. Geopolitical consequences. So a very short and crisp introduction where I have basically talked about what I am going to write. And tell me, can I say that this such type of introduction, does it gives me an opportunity to write my answer in or use headings in my answer? Have I paved the way to write my answer with headings and make it more presentable, make it easier for the one who is reading? So that we can talk about. Then I have to start with the economic consequences of population aging. Okay, I would suggest you, some of you are using different words like impairment, burden, etc. I would suggest always use the keyword which is there in the question. Okay, because that, when we are using the keyword, it essentially means that we are hitting the question directly and we are not beating around the bush. So it gives an impression of an answer being more tailor-made rather than ready-made. Can you understand what I am saying here? So economic consequences. So several economic consequences are there. What are the economic consequences? Very important economic consequence which can be there is the case of economic slowdown. So what will essentially happen in the case of economic aspect is that the society or the economy will soon experience the problem of scarcity of labor. यार थोड़ा सा दिमाग लगा सूरजीत. Tell me which developing country we have seen that is facing right now the problem of aging. Which developing country can you name right now which is facing the problem of aging? They will be facing the problem of aging in future. So if you want to just mention one line, one paragraph in the last, but how you'll be writing separately for developed and developing? There is no sense in writing like that. Okay. Yes, problems would be same. It will just be repetition. So economy. So what we are saying is experience the problem of scarcity of labor. As a result of which, what will happen? One aspect is that the cost of labor would increase. The cost of labor would increase. For example, I'll give an example. In Japan automobile industry, what is found that the pensions and perks which are given to the labor, they alone account for the highest share in the total factor cost. total factor cost. ठीक है, so all if you talk about the factors included, highest is this pensions and perks which are given, which is huge, because here we are not talking about an industry which is service oriented industry. Here we are talking about manufacturing industry, and you can understand that how much big is the share. So what will happen, overall the cost of labor would be increasing, and solutions like in migration, can create several other socio-economic problems. Several socio-economic problems. We have already seen in migration can create several type of problems of assimilation and division in the society, etc., etc. Okay, so this is again one aspect. In fact, what it has led to in recent times, you can also talk about this. We'll later see in economic geography. In recent times, this problem has led to phenomena of delocalization of industry from the developed world towards developing countries like India. इंडिया एंड चाइना, पहले चाइना लिखना चाहिए. China, India, Southeast Asian tiger countries. ठीक है, so that is one very important issue that is related with the economic aspect. So overall, what it does, it has the potential of economic slowdown. ठीक है, so that is one factor. Second is the old age dependency rises. So this rise in the old age dependency, it creates additional burden on the exchequer and the economy. Additional burden on the exchequer and the economy. ठीक है, so you know several type of problems which are there, like for example this old age dependency would be in the form of social security network which is created, which includes you know the pensions which are given. एक्चुअली वो पेंशन वाला एग्जाम्पल यहाँ पर आना चाहिए. आई गेव इट देयर. For the first point, you actually take the example of this delocalization. ये वाला example लो. This is better. Are we clear about this? Okay. So pensions are there, old age homes, additional health expenditure. If you want to write about the domestic demand low, you write here one of the causes of economic slowdown would also be domestic demand would reduce. So additional health expenditure, all these would be on the what? All these would be on the rise. So this would create additional economic problems. Additional economic problems. In fact, when it comes to the social security, have we talked about, like for example, population policy problem, dilemma of the developed world, ये हमने बात किया है population policy में, yes or no? Whether what type of two type of problems हमने discuss किए थे, if you remember, the dilemma of population policy of the developed world. One was basically related with this, how to more rationalize the social security schemes which are there, how to provide social security to the future population. Okay, so this in turn would be essentially creating several type of issues. So very big issue they are facing is today what to do with this social security. The old age people, they are not accepting the demand from the government to reduce the social security which is being given to them, and they are also right to do so, because they, when they were young, they paying through their taxes, they allowed the social security to their elders, and now they have done their duties and they want the state to take care of them. So they do not at all agree with the reduction in the social security which is to be given to them. And secondly, very clearly, then what to do if there is no reduction, then what to do with the, how to provide social security to the population in future, the present working population. So it is a very big dilemma that is there in front of the developed world. And I have told you, simple as solution, you more tax the rich. Rich are getting more and more rich, but you know very well that because these are the people who are making the policies, they don't want to tax themselves more. So that is out of question. Nobody is thinking about that. They'll give you silly reasons for that demotivation, etc., etc. Okay. So this is one of the very essential economic problem. Okay, so economic consequences. If I talk about the social consequences. So tell me, can I say there are various social consequences? One very important social consequence is related with the demography. Demographic change. And when I am talking about the demographic change, can I say we have talked about this problem of feminization. Feminization of population. So we have already seen that with aging, we have seen that since women life expectancy at birth is higher, what we find, there are more female survivors than male in the old age. So there are more female survivors which are there. So this creates several socio-economic problems. This creates several socio-economic problems. For example, tell me, one type of socio-economic problem that would be created would be the case of economic security. Can we say that most of the women survivors are essentially widowed economic survivors? And this essentially means, because most of societies are patriarchal societies. So mostly what happens, mostly we find that women don't have much saving and assets to rely in their old age. So this creates what? This creates a very big problem for them. Also, you can understand the overall, the physical and mental security. So again, if you talk about old women, there is additional threats. Additional type of threats are there with respect to security. Other problems like loneliness creates problem of mental security. Okay, so this is one of the very problematic issue which is related with it. Okay, so that is one. Then if you talk about other very big issue which is there is the problem of poverty rises, because what we find generally, old age, we find that there is no employment opportunities available. Also, very limited people have enough saving and assets to take care of them in their old age. ठीक है. So this is very big problem. This problem is expected to be more severe. If you want to write, you write it like this: expected to be more severe in developing countries in future. In the future, because here what will happen? Can I say the number of people having not enough saving and assets to for the future, for the old age, is much higher? Yes or no? And this will create problems in achieving their sustainable development targets in future. Sustainable development targets in future. So again, yes, you are very correct that why this problem is expected to be more severe in developing countries, because here the social security net is very weak. Social security net is very weak. So this is again the social consequences of this problem. Then there can be some cultural consequences. Cultural consequences of this issue, old age or aging of the population. So what essentially is the cultural consequences? We will be finding that in aged population, find themselves isolated and excuse me, secluded from the rest of population, as they are unable to cope up with the fast changing culture in modern times. And we are saying that now because more old age people are surviving. Earlier it was less of an issue because there was less old age people surviving, but now because there is more number of people are surviving, this will be a big issue. This will be the present culture. It would be more unacceptable to them, but they cannot do anything for that. And this would essentially create what? Frustration, more mental problems. Yes, generation gap would be very huge. So you can also write that, huge generation gap. Okay. So this is one issue which we can basically talk about with respect to the cultural aspect of the problem. Okay. And with more old age, society's growth as an entity will be completely lowered down where aged population is in maximum. Yes, you can talk about that in the social aspect. अगर लिखना है तो इस पॉइंट को यहाँ पर लिख सकते हो, that poverty rises जो हमने लिखा है, इस पॉइंट को you can just talk about the questions on continuity of the society. ठीक है. और पॉइंट लिखना है इसमें तो you can also talk about here social consequences. Since we are talking about, you can also write one more point with respect to, उससे पहले इनफैक्ट इस वाले से लिखना health related problems like Alzheimer, etc. ठीक है. But all those would go essentially into the social issues. So cultural aspect एक point लिख सकते हैं. Then if you talk about the case of geopolitical, yes, that is what we said, geopolitical consequences. So what will be the essentially geopolitical consequences? We know very well that geopolitical status is tied with economic and technological status. With aging, there can be economic slowdown, can be there other problems like technological development slowdown also can happen. Also what will happen? The overall population declines, particularly of young age. So this essentially translates into decline in the geopolitical status of nations. Yes, very good example of this is the Europe. Europe. You can understand that America didn't allow itself to become that much aged compared to Europe because of its more flexible migration policy. Okay, so comparatively America did well than Europe. So that is basically this question. What are the consequences of the aging of the population? Then let us talk about the issue of population problems. Population problems. I'll give you 3 minutes. Think, suppose if you have to write an essay on population problems, what essentially you will be writing? How you will be writing this? Okay, now here when you are writing this, you can take number of frameworks. You can basically take, and you people are just writing randomly, just giving points. That is not the way I was thinking. Some of you have tried to organize, that is very good. So here you have to take up a framework, how you will organize your answer, and very clearly I can take number of frameworks, like for example, one framework which is very commonly you will be finding in the books is the framework of developed and developing countries framework. So population problems of developed world, population problems of the developing world. Another framework that you can take up is the continent wise framework, continent subcontinent wise framework, that can also be taken up. We have seen when we were talking about population growth, etc., and many other demographic attributes, we said that because this data is more readily available, more easily available data is there with respect to the continent wise framework, because all the UN population programs, etc., they are providing continent wise framework. So again, this can be one framework which you can take up. Then if you talk about other framework, can be the framework which yesterday one topic was uploaded on over, under and optimum population. Okay, so this framework can be the population resource ratio classification framework can be taken up. So if you remember, we talked about the European type, American type, Brazilian type, Egyptian type and Arctic type. Arctic type. Okay, so we know very well each of them have their own issues and problems of population. Yes or no? Yes, this was the Ackermann classification. So this can also be one framework which you can essentially take up. Okay? Any doubt with respect to this? Now, if suppose I essentially have to put all this within one category or group, because see, the problem is that there are many areas which are overlapping, and okay, if I just take this, it would be good. That is one. But many times the questions can be just related with, they can ask you directly, what are the problems of developing countries, problems of developed countries. Okay. So tell me, can I classify them? So for example, when I am talking about developed countries, can I say within this I would include the European type, American type and Arctic type? Yes or no? And within the developing, I would include the Brazilian and the Egyptian type. ठीक है. Now अगर मैं इसी में if I also within this I think about, so European type, essentially it would be, can I divide it into the West Europe and Eastern Europe, Western and Eastern Europe? Yes or no? American type, essentially, you know, it includes Anglo America. Here Arctic type is essentially Arctic, Canada, and plus Scandinavia plus Arctic Russia. Siberia is included in that. ठीक है. When we are talking about the Brazilian, within Brazilian is most of Latin America. Most of the Latin America. Plus here also a special category is the Sub-Saharan Africa. Sub-Saharan Africa. Can you understand this point? Also, Brazilian was basically associated with what? Underpopulated areas. Have we seen that? Tell me. It is high resource and low technology. Sub-Saharan Africa perfectly fits in that. Egyptian, you know very well, it is South Asia, East Asia and Southeast Asia is here. Brazilian type में some others can also be included. Very good is the case of Central Asia. Central Asia. One area of the world which is very difficult to include here, and this area is the Southwest Asia. So I'll just put it in the Brazilian type, because with technological development we know so much type of resources have opened up in Southwest Asia. Here there is lots of oil resource, oil and natural gas resource. Okay. So in that sense it can import many other resources and can support more number of people here. But this is the framework that you have to keep in mind. Although some people can also put Southwest Asia here also, because when it comes to the resources like water, fertile land, etc., did we saw that Southwest Asia, how much Southwest Asia and North Africa, how much already they are overpopulated, how much was their physiological density? Do you remember? याद है? Tell me fast. ठीक है. So I'm going to take this Ackermann framework. Come on यार. Australia and New Zealand would be included here. in the European type. They would be और ऑस्ट्रेलिया न्यूजीलैंड को हम अमेरिकन टाइप में भी पुट कर सकते हैं बिकॉज दे हैव लॉट्स ऑफ वेट. You don't put them here, you put them here. ऑस्ट्रेलिया न्यूजीलैंड अमेरिकन टाइप में उन्हें पुट करो. ओशियानिया वुड बी पुट इन ब्राजीलियन टाइप. But some of Oceania can also be put here also. Some of the islands have high population density, some have low population density. ठीक है. So this is the framework that essentially you remember. If you remember this framework, then any type of question which is asked from this topic of population problem, you will be able to solve it. ठीक है. Now if we talk about, first let us start with the problems of European type. Population. European type population. And I'll give you 2 minutes. To think on this. Many times you are writing this word, Surajit, social disorder. What exactly do you mean by social disorder? Because for me, so many problems in the society, all of them are social disorders. Very big word you are using, social disorder. Okay. So again, from where you learned this definition of social disorder, I cannot understand. There is different thing. What you are trying to say, there is a different term for that. Okay. So let us look into the problems of the European type of population. Can I say, here I first of all can divide, if I am writing it into 2 parts. Can I say, first I can talk about general problems, yes or no, and then can I also write about some of the specific problems which are being faced? Like, can I write something specific with respect to East Europe? Eastern Europe has more problems than Western Europe, and although many problems like population, aging, etc., they are very common in Eastern Europe and Western Europe, but Eastern Europe has extra set of problems. Yes or no? Like we saw the problem of mortality reversals. This problem of mortality reversals was happening where? It was happening where? We have already seen that it is more problematic in Eastern Europe. It is taking place in Eastern Europe and not in the Western Europe. Okay. So, if you talk about the general problems of the European type population, so can I say that one big problem, one of the biggest problems they are facing is the problem of aging of the in fact, you start more logically. So you say that the problem of very low fertility, this problem of very low fertility, and this problem of very low fertility essentially means that there is problems like labor scarcity, lower demand. All these are getting into economic slowdown. Then we have already talked about the population aging problem. So I will not elaborate this. There is this big problem of the population aging that they are facing. Then problems related with migration. So basically these developed European countries, they have what? They have dilemma with respect to migration policy. Because there are several issues associated with in migration. One important issue associated with in migration is what? That there can be the threat of ethnic change or racial change, which can take place. There are others like assimilation of migrants, assimilation of the migrants in the host population. This is a very, very big issue they are facing. Okay. And others like racial or ethnic divisions in the society. Already they are facing this problem. Many places the fight which is taking place between blacks and whites, or the Christians and Muslims, it is already there. We saw in what happened in case of France, for example, recent times. ठीक है. So such type of ethnic clashes or divisions, इसको clashes भी लिख सकते हैं, they are taking place. So there is lots of dilemma, there is lots of problems which are arising with respect to migration and which type of migration policy they should be adopting. Again, there are several issues related with that. ठीक है. So this is one aspect of the European population. Then I would talk about specific, and I can say some specific problems related with Eastern Europe. Specific problems related with Eastern Europe. So tell me, what are the specific problems related with Eastern Europe? Can I say Eastern Europe is one area which is mainly, or it has high it is facing very problematic issue of economic and political instability. Economic and political instability it is being faced, because this was an area which became independent after 1991, and before it was under it was part of the Soviet Russia, the Soviet Union. And here, in a way, you can understand that still what happens, there is a kind of a silent Cold War still goes on between the between Russia and US. So here there is frequent changes of the ministers, prime minister, presidents. The political regime change is very common. Sometimes it is Russia dominates, sometimes it is America dominates. Yes, Crimea issue, Ukraine is a very classic example of this political instability. Okay. So this political instability has translated also into economic instability for these countries. So beside facing all other problems related with Europe, what is happening here? That they have this economic and political instability. So very clearly here that they are high on social development. But comparatively, very important word this is, comparatively. We are not saying that they are economically underdeveloped. We are saying they are comparatively less economically developed. Economic development. So this is one, and this in turn has led to issues which are there, and one is the problem of mortality reversals. We have already talked about this, so I am not going to elaborate this problem. Mortality reversals. Then one big problem which East Europe is facing is that it is characterized by large emigration of skilled professionals, skilled and semi-skilled professionals. So we have already talked about that European policy of migration has been restrictive. It was more, till now, it was more in favor of, it was more of a racial migration policy. So they were more in favor of the white population. So very clearly, one type of white population which is more interested in moving towards this West Europe is very clearly the Eastern Europeans. They have at least some cultural similarity, being racially similar, similarities being other type of similarities with respect to religion, etc. ठीक है. So East Europe is one of the very important suppliers of migrants to West Europe and to some extent to also Americas. As a result of which, this problem has led to what? Can I say this has led to the problem of brain drain, and this has clearly affected the economic or technological and economic development. If most of the skilled people migrate out, who are innovators, who basically are creating the innovations and creating those spurts of growth. बाद में देखेंगे in the development theory that how much important is the case of innovation with respect to development. ठीक है. So again, what will happen? There would be slowdown in the economic development as well. So these are the specific issues which you can write with respect to the European type. ठीक है. Then specifically we can mention the problems of American type. So can I say, when I am mentioning the problems of American type, that it also experiences most of the problems faced by European type, like low fertility is also a problem, although less than Europe. So we have already seen how the fertility has gone below the replacement level. यहाँ पर कितना था fertility, याद है? North America, how much fertility we saw? It was 1.9 if you remember, in USA particularly. And in American type, it is mostly what? USA and the maritime provinces of Canada are included here in the European type. So low fertility, problems of aging, here specifically the problem of migration issues. So here what is very important thing, that when we talk about migration, this problem is more bigger in American type due to its greater liberal migration policy and the problem of illegal migrants. ठीक है. So this has led to what? This has created a kind of racial divide in the society, and this racial divide is very clearly visible in the white and blacks or Africans and Asians, you can basically write. Blacks mat likho, it is not good. Hispanics, which are coming from South America or Central and South America. So there is a very, very clear divide. And have we seen, like for example, in recent times, how much Trump was able to make use of this divide? In fact, using this divide, he was able to become the president of United States. So much for this, the so-called or the most educated people on earth. You can understand that how much education can also delude you. Like we are seeing today the same case in case of India. Okay, so that is basically what? That is one of the very big problems which are there in the American type of population. So specific जो problem है उसको थोड़ा highlight कर दो. In American type, there is one more specific problem which is related with it. And one specific problem of American type is that the distribution of population is highly uneven. Highly uneven. मैप बना सकते हैं यहाँ पर. So it is mostly where coastal areas. Some can say it as a problem, some can also see as an opportunity. But we have to mention this. Another problem is the issue of very high levels of individualization or individualism in the society. I didn't mention this in European case because you can understand that in Europe there is still something like you can say that the community values etc. still some of them are intact. Okay, so there is still some dominance, not full dominance, but still it is mixed in the culture. Because large parts of Europe, they are still based upon that agrarian economy. They have industrialized, but still they are based upon that agrarian economy. But when it comes to the North America, particularly US, is considered as the epitome of capitalism, and capitalism is all about the individual rights of the individual. So there is a very high levels of individualism in the society is found. Okay, and as a result, several social problems several type of social problems are rising or very high. Like for example, the problems of here there is variety of deviant behaviors, like for example child delinquency. ठीक है. So variety of type of social problems like high rate of divorce and as we said several other deviant behaviors like drug abuse etc. ठीक है. So child delinquency, if you talk about, it is basically what situation where abnormal behavior in children, deviant behavior in the children is seen. For example, you might have seen very commonly this is in news कि वहाँ पर एक बच्चा a student just went, उसने gun उठाया because there many of the states there is no need for license also for keeping these weapons. They have deluded themselves in believing that there is a very big threat to their personal life and thus they need to keep themselves safe. For that they need to keep weapons for themselves. It is a kind of hysteria which was created by the weapons industry, which was there in very clearly in America. So because of that, in some of the states it is more freely available without even need for license. So you might have heard कि वो न्यूज़ आया कि उसका मन किया उठा एंड अगेन सडनली क्या किया, वो उसने गन उठाया और जा कर के वो मार दिया. सेवरल ऑफ देम जस्ट ही वेंट एंड किल्ड आउट ऑफ फन. ठीक है. सो सच टाइप ऑफ चाइल्ड delinquencies, abnormal behaviors are associated with the population of America. Yes, you can also talk about malnutrition and lifestyle diseases are there, more particularly related with, but this is in general you can talk about the whole developed countries, not only with America, it is problem with the whole developed countries. ठीक है. So this is the main issues which are specifically we should mention with the American type. Then if you talk about the Arctic type, problems of the Arctic type. So what are the problems associated with the Arctic type? Very clearly this area is also, it suffers from most of the problems of European type. So here also low fertility is a very big issue. Here also if you talk about, there is aging of population. Here also the same problem of migration dilemma. So all these problems they are facing, and some specific issues are more compounded here. Problems is that of very low population density. They have very, very low population density. And this very clearly creates what? Issues with respect to the efficient utilization with respect to the efficient utilization of the resources. So very clearly these areas are what? They are highly underpopulated areas. Okay. So life is essentially what? Tough here. That is what we are trying to say. Then other main problem is essentially, you can here mention the environmental problem. Environmental problem. So tell me, which is one area which is going to experience very comparatively higher change due to the global warming? With respect to the global warming problem. So again, this environmental problem is what? It is a future big issue for here, and that is one of the reasons you will be finding that these countries are at the front of all the global environmental movements, because they know very well that these would be the areas which would be most affected, one of the most affected by the phenomena of climate change or global warming. ठीक है. सो इनके लिए स्पेसिफिकली हमने क्या कर दिया? दो अलग से स्पेसिफिक प्रॉब्लम्स बता दिए. Like here, melting of the ice is creating so many type of problems, like thermokarst etc. are on the rise. ठीक है. So this is the three type. So developed, यहाँ पर देखा तुमने, what we said, we talked about in a way हमने developed खत्म कर लिया. We mostly talked about the developed, and अगर specifically अलग से mention करना है, I forgot, you could have mentioned the Australia and New Zealand also. ठीक है. Thermokarst is a kind of pseudo karst landform, and karst here means this वाला karst. Like for example, actually what happens in these areas, the soil is permanently frozen. So what happens here, because of the phenomena of melting which is taking place now, when the ice has melted, the landscape would become more like this. At several places you will be finding this water like field phenomena, and here, like if I have a bird's eye view, you can understand. So the landscape which is there, some would say that melting of ice is good as agriculture can be undertaken. It is a very, very difficult task. It becomes highly degraded. So this is basically what, this is what we call it as the thermokarst. ठीक है. So several such type of problems are on the rise in these areas already, and melting creates several type of problems. Like suppose you say, like here this was an area where this is a frozen soil is frozen, and as the soil is frozen, we call it as the permafrost zone. So suppose you are making a house here, tell me, if this frozen soil ultimately melts. What will happen with the stability of infrastructure created here? Will it remain stable? Definitely the stability, it would become unstable and several type of infrastructural issues would be rising. So these countries, these areas, yes, oil leakage, etc., oil pipelines which are going, there is a threat with respect to that. Okay, so that is the case. Then if you talk about problems of Brazilian type, what is the problem of Brazilian type of population? Several type of problems are to be found here. One very big issue with respect to the Brazilian type of population is that Brazilian type of population has very high level of urban poverty. Poverty in general and urban poverty in specific. ठीक है, urban poverty in specific. For example, here what we find in Brazil, about 80% of population resides in cities, in the cities, and out of this 80% of urban population lives in what they call as favelas, which are essentially slums here. ठीक है, so there is very high level of inequality. Very high level of inequality is to be found in this population. So this is one issue which is related with the specifically the Brazilian type of population. Overall, the Brazilian type of population is what? It is underpopulated area. Underpopulated. So here there is lower level of technology as well as not enough population to efficiently utilize the resources. So underpopulation would be manifested in which type of problems? Can I say these problems would be, in fact, underpopulated वाला point पहले लिखना है, फिर वो second वाला point, first जो point है, then you write that. So underpopulated, very clearly here there would be low levels of socio-economic development. So we know per capita income, etc., all these would be issues which would be related with that. Okay, so this is one basic issue which is there. Then in this there is a third problem which is very clearly emerging. It is high level of environmental degradation. environmental degradation which is taking place in these areas. So for example, you can give example of the fast pace of Amazon deforestation which is occurring. The Amazon deforestation which is essentially occurring here, and again issues, problems related with that, which would create regional and global problems. And local problems. Okay. So again, that is one issue which is related with that. Yes, you can definitely mention about the here tribal problems. Ethnic, और उसको अलग से लिख दो अफ्रीका के लिए specifically. So tribal problems you can generally write what problems they are facing. Yes, there is high immigration rate, there is encroachment of land which is taking place. All those problems you talk about here. Particularly what we find that इसमें specifically लिख सकते हो कि higher immigration, others like encroachment over land. Overall what it is doing, several others like health problems. In this there is even higher level of poverty. And very clearly all this is manifested in very fast loss of culture. Their specific cultures is lost at very fast rate. Now when we are talking about, tell me, can we mention specific things like specific problems of South America and Central America, और इसको लिख सकते हो Latin America. So what are the specific problems of Latin America? Can I say one big problem here is the political instability. Political instability, like you take the example of the instability which was there in countries like Venezuela, Colombia, several countries. There is this high level of political instability, and this is creating what? This is one of the problems which has led to high rate of crimes. Okay, so some specific countries this problem is highly manifested. Okay, and so that is specific problems. Then specific problems of your sub-Saharan Africa. So what is the specific problem of sub-Saharan Africa? It is highly resource rich area, and here if you talk about several type of problems, most importantly is the ethnic you write and cultural clashes which are there. clashes which are there. So we know very well that if I talk about Africa, we have seen that this northern Africa is what? It is the Islamic realm. While if you talk about this is the Christian realm. So this area particularly is what? Is an area you can very clearly see, which is the conflict zone. So here several such type of conflicts related with religion are very common. Yes, like Boko Haram and such religious movements and issues associated with that. So this is one type of conflict. Beside the African society is what? It is so much divided into ethnicities. So there is very high ethnic diversity in Africa. And this has led to what? Several such type of ethnic conflicts. So conflict zones which are there. Like for example, the case of here, the South Sudan region, Darfur region, in case of South Sudan, other if you talk about this southern central Congo, ठीक है, others some areas of these areas of West Africa. So these are, yes, Katanga Plateau region. These are the areas of ethnic conflicts which are there in case of Africa. So there are several such specific issues which are related with them. In fact, दोनों में ही अगर हम एक और common चीज लिख सकते थे, the issue of rise of authoritative regimes. लैक ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी, ठीक है, ये दोनों में ही है. एंड अफ्रीका में इट इज इवन मोर मैनिफेस्टेड इन केस ऑफ अफ्रीका. ठीक है, सो दैट इज बेसिकली यू कैन टॉक अबाउट विद इन द ब्राजीलियन टाइप्स. एंड स्पेसिफिकली इफ यू वांट टू मेंशन अबाउट द साउथ वेस्ट एशिया एंड सेंट्रल एशिया specific problems, so Southwest Asia में basically what is the specific problem? Still high level of, in fact ये दोनों में ही है, specifically इसके लिए high level of fertility, ठीक है. बट इफ आई टॉक अबाउट मोर कॉमन इश्यूज विच आर देयर हियर ऑल्सो, वेरी हाई लेवल ऑफ inequality is to be found here. If you talk about status of women, generally low, ठीक है. So several such type of specific problems you can talk about in this case. Southwest Asia में भी यहाँ पर भी you can talk about the authoritative regimes. Central Asia, again the problem of political instability. but both of them very clearly have one common thing, that they have surplus of resource. They have very high level of resource and they can even support more number of people. Southwest Asia is comparatively progressing well in terms of the development of technology compared to the Central Asia. Central Asia, it is still like a pseudo colony of Russia. So that is the Brazilian type. Then we can talk about the problems of Egyptian type. So we know the Egyptian type is what? It is, first important aspect is it is overpopulated region. So since it is overpopulated, very clearly what will happen? All the problems associated with low level of income, high poverty levels, high inequality, etc. Or I can go on like others, like when it comes to problems like undernutrition, or I can say health, low on health related parameters, etc. So this is one big issue with these areas. Now they are already overpopulated, and here what we find, that the population growth is still high. We have seen, although they have reached the third stage of demographic transition, but because of the larger population base, even the slowdown in the growth translates into more big number of people, and this is creating problems like food security in future. This is what it is questionable. There are doubts being raised how they will be able to feed so much number of people. Here also, if you talk about in these countries, we are finding that there is other problems like high level of distress migration. Distress migration taking place. वो उधर भी लिख सकते थे. You can have used the word Brazilian type, maybe you can talk about that. And this is leading to what? This is leading to faster urbanization, which is taking place. This urbanization is, however, dominated by what? There is, you can use the word metropolization. So here also, although not so much like in the Brazilian types, here also we find that there is problem of slums and urban poverty. The problem of slums and the urban poverty. And you can talk about the future problem, that for example in the next 3 decades we expect that we'll be adding, in India alone, we'll be adding 300 million people in the cities. Ideally, for this much of population, you can understand that for every year we need to create at least one Detroit like city. This should be the pace of the urbanization. But we know this will be not able to do, and as a result most of this population would be adjusted where? It would be adjusted in the already existing big cities which can provide the employment. Intervening opportunities are missing. Okay? So this is basically what? Another big problem that is associated with them. Okay? Here again there is what? Third big issue that you can talk about these areas is that there is cultural transition taking place. They are in cultural transition. So culture is changing at a faster rate in these countries, and that is why there is several type of cultural tensions, as there are clearly the more developed, or we can say that there is clash between the modern cultural urban pockets, or divide also we can say, and the traditional cultural rural areas. So this is one aspect. That means there is large cultural gap. Cultural tension का मतलब है यहाँ पर there is large cultural gap. हम इसको famously इंडिया में हम क्या बोलते हैं? We call it as, like for example, India and Bharat. The gap which exists between India and Bharat. So this is another issue which is there, and the age transition which is taking place in them. So very importantly, what has happened? Presently, they are facing this aspect or positive of demographic dividend. But soon, what will happen? In few decades, they will also face the problem of population aging. In China, it is expected that this problem will start in 2 decades. India will take 3 to 4 decades more when the problem sets in. Okay? So they will also face the problem of population aging, which will be more severe here. Okay? So which will be more severe here. Yes, one thing I forgot. Thank you, Surajit. Here when we were talking about, in both of them, you can talk about the problem of mortality reversals, particularly Africa वाले केस में. In sub-Saharan Africa, you have to mention. Sub-Saharan Africa. Okay? So this is basically the way in which we'll be writing the population problems. And believe me, जिस तरह से हमने अभी इसको framework बना करके, the way we have done this, you will not find this type of description to be written in any population book. Any population, कोई एक population की book ला करके दिखा दो where they have written about the population problems in this manner. ठीक है. So some of the very applied topics, if you talk about, sometimes it is better to create your own set of content than just relying on the traditional sources. They are not so much creative. Are we clear? ठीक है. और with this what we'll be able to do, we are able to cover in this framework all the aspects, all the, you see, in this framework हमने सारे areas को ले लिया. ठीक है. So this is the issue of population problem which is there. Already हमने population policy कर लिया है. So many of the things we have already more or less seen. ठीक है. So if you need specifics, examples, we have already done. Like we were talking about health issues, we already know that these parameters are low. You can give examples with respect to several countries. When we were talking about fertility levels are low in developed world, we can give specific examples of how these fertility levels are low. Or when we are talking about mortality reversals, we have already seen the cases of mortality reversals which are there. ठीक है. So I'll stop for today. Age transition, can it lead to legalize euthanasia? We don't know. How you can take life? The thing is, how you can take life? This is a very complicated and ethical question, and I don't think that we'll be reaching a stage where in exceptional cases, if you leave some exceptional cases, there can be legalization of euthanasia, because humanity is basically what? Humanity is all about hope. When this hope ultimately dies, then human beings also are finished. So we are talking about the legalization today in the world, but we don't know what will happen. So it is more hypothetical. Your question is, Yogesh, a more hypothetical one. Does linguistic diversity is covered, which is left in perspective topics? Language was, I think, there in the videos of cultural setting. Linguistic diversity नहीं था क्या? I think it should be there. It was not there. ठीक है. What I'll tell them, they'll upload one more video of linguistic diversity. Yes, I know that it is asked only in case of absolute disabilities, but how do you define absolute disability? This is the big problem. ठीक है. So I'll tell them to add one video of cultural setting. Sorry, linguistic diversity. One question left. Several socio-economic views on population growth provided a prelude to development. No. This question we have already done. Either you missed the class or you were sleeping in the class. Can we add cultural settings and religion and secularism we used in GS2 some of the aspects. Keywords you can use, there is no problem in using the keywords, because these are also general keywords which a normal person should be knowing. बट यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड कि उस क्लास में मैंने बहुत क्लियरली समझाया है, आई हैव एक्सप्लेन्ड इट वेरी वेरी क्लियरली दैट देर इज डिफरेंस बिटवीन सेकुलराइजेशन एंड सेकुलरिज्म. टेल मी योगेश, येस और नो? डोंट यू थिंक दैट देर इज डिफरेंस बिटवीन सेकुलराइजेशन एंड सेकुलरिज्म? सो अगेन सी, खुद से गलती कर रहे हो तुम. Okay, so I'll stop for today. We'll meet on Monday and we'll talk about those topics which are left, and from Tuesday we'll be starting with economic geography. Good night to all of you. Take care.